Harry Rock, and welcome to another edition of the Westfield Council on Aging Presents. This is a special collaborative effort between Tina Gorman, Executive Director of the Westfield Senior Center, and Pete Coles, producer of WCPC Westfield Cable Channel 15. Our topic today is addictions across the generations, and my guest is Kathy Cotugno, coordinator of CORE of Greater Westfield, and CORE stands for the Coalition for Outreach, Recovery, and Education for the City. So, Kathy, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you on with us, and I think it's going to be very interesting just to hear the great information that you have to share with us. But I always like to, when I get started with these, is kind of introduce the listening and watching public to my guest and find out a little bit about who they are. So where'd you grow up as a kid?
So I actually grew up in East Granby, Connecticut, just over the border. Went to a Catholic high school in West Hartford, and then I went to Westfield State, and I have stayed in Westfield, and I raised my kids here in Westfield. So here I actually recently moved to Montgomery, but I still think it's part of Westfield.
Well, we'll accept that, because originally in 1669, when Westfield was originally incorporated as a town, Montgomery was actually part of Westfield, and then they broke off about another 100 years later. So we'll accept Montgomery. It's a great town. I live up near Montgomery myself. So in college, what was your degree?
Special education.
Okay. And so how long have you actually worked for the city now?
I've worked for the city for 2 years, and prior to that, I actually ran a family daycare business in Westfield for 25 years.
Oh, wow. Wow, good for you. So is this a new position, or are you replacing someone and the position was already there?
So I actually replaced Kathy Sittler. CORE, which was originally called the Westfield Drug Task Force, was actually originated 5 years ago when we unfortunately had 4 deaths in a weekend from heroin overdoses. And the task force was put together with Brian Sullivan and a few other other people. And so I was asked to be a parent actually on that board, and the reason is that my son is one of the people that died that weekend. So I was a parent on that committee, in that board, and we worked on education for the community, and began building that coalition. And then Kathy made the decision to move on, and the city made the decision to actually make it a part-time paid position. And the position was offered to me, and I openly accepted the position. I was really excited about it, just because I think that we have a great work to do in our city, prevention-wise for our kids. We're working on some great recovery programs. We've put together a DART program that's at our police department that actually does outreach. We have an outreach team that goes out and post overdoses, goes and sees those persons to offer them services, to offer them support, with the hopes that we can meet them where they're at and give them some services and hope for not a second overdose, which unfortunately reality is it does happen. And so we also give support to the families so that they can get Narcan, they can get family resources, and just a direction in support for people that are in substance use.
So when we think about Westfield, we'll kind of center in on Westfield. What are the statistics here? How much of an issue is there? And is it an understated? Is it?
It is understated.
It is.
So in 2021, up until July, we have already had 37 overdoses that were non-fatal, and we have had 6 fatal overdoses.
Since when?
January of 2021.
Wow. So you don't read about those or hear about those?
We don't.
And when you say overdoses, what is this? Illegal drugs? Legal? It's like prescription drugs?
So those statistics are mainly it's usually a heroin. Really, honestly, I can tell you that at this point in America, about 95% of the overdoses are really a fentanyl overdose. Heroin really has become not to be part of the substance, unfortunately. So it's a new it's a new way of looking at it. 20, 30 years ago, it was pure heroin. That is not the case anymore. We do live on the corridor of 91. So, for Chicopee, Springfield, Holyoke, Westfield, we're right on that corridor, Agawam, West Springfield. So our numbers, statistically show that we have a problem.
One of the things that we see this on the news quite often where, state police or local police will have stopped a car for a traffic stop or traffic issue or whatever, and they inspect the car and they find it loaded with drugs and guns and money and all that. And it makes you think about the fact that as many times as I see that on the news, how many are getting through that they're not stopping or aren't aware of.
Right. And then there's the other piece that I look at as, honestly, our system is broken. Mm-hmm. Our police officers are doing their job. They're making the arrests. They're finding the guns. They're finding the drugs. But then they go into the court system and they're released. Like recently, there was just an article about a gentleman in Springfield who was caught a second time with an ankle bracelet on. He'd been released in the court system back into the community, but he's back selling. He's back doing, selling drugs, selling guns. The issue is bigger than just a drug use. And I think here in America, part of our problem is our system really is broken. How do we fix that? Mm-hmm. It's devastating to me. And we could also talk about prescription drugs that really have preempted our epidemic, which has been silenced because of COVID, but has been escalating. And we, people began using prescription drugs, and then things changed. Well, they can't get their prescription drugs anymore. Where are they going to go? They're addicted. They're going to go to the streets to find what they can. And then we have the issue today of it's being manufactured on the streets. We have pills being manufactured that aren't legal pills. So you don't know what you're getting. So there was that young person in California who purchased his prescription drugs online, and he died because it was full of fentanyl. So it's not just about heroin use; it's about prescription use. It is about alcohol. It is about addiction, and it's about us getting out there and talking about addiction, mental health, and how are we going to help our community members.
Is the primary function of your job to be informational and spread, updates on where people can get help and, what the issues are, or are you actually involved in intervention?
All of the above.
Okay. All in 19 hours a week.
All on 19 hours a week.
Right.
It is all of the above. And I think that the prevention piece is in the school system. And we have some school counselors that are on our board and join me monthly at our meetings and actually are very helpful in the background. along with Stefan, and it is talking about programs for our school system. Of course, last year with COVID, it kind of a lot didn't happen. But
Yeah.
I can tell you that I just was invited to do a Families at Risks program at the middle school a week ago, which was awesome to be able to talk to the kids and talk to the parents. And that's just about getting the information out to the kids and getting them to start making some choices and talking about it at a young age that addiction is a disease. It's in your brain when you're born. We don't know if that piece of your brain has the addictive personality or not until you actually start using substances. And that can start as simply as vaping, which isn't simple, but a scary issue that we are currently having in all of our communities. That triggers that addiction gene in your brain if you have it, which is there from birth. And I can say for my kids, I had one who had the addictive gene and I have one who didn't. I wish I knew what I knew now then, but hopefully I can help another family. So those kids need to make choices about vaping, trying cigarettes, drinking. And families need to, we as a society have always kind of taken our family issues and kept them under the rug. So that, Uncle Johnny's feeling under the weather today was kind of, you would hear in your families. Well, but honestly, Uncle Johnny's an alcoholic. And instead of talking about that and presenting the information of what that means for their uncle or for themselves, we just shuffle it under the rug and try to hope that it won't ever happen to another family member. But we all see it, not in every family. It's or a neighbor. And if we could educate our kids about making those choices, if you are a family who has a history of substance use, and when I say substance use, I'm talking about nicotine, alcohol, vaping, marijuana, pill use, and then you could move into illicit drugs from there. All of those, and not only that, eating disorders. They're gambling. All of those are addictive behaviors, and that's all manifests in your brain. So if we could get the point out to kids to understand, one, your brain doesn't stop developing until you're 24. So if you start using marijuana or alcohol or cigarettes at 12 or 13, you're stunting the growth of your brain. So how do we get our kids today to make the appropriate choices? That is kind of my gear. And Stefan and I have talked a lot about it. We have a couple grant opportunities.
Stefan Zaporowski, Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you. Sorry. There are some grant opportunities out there for communities. We are honestly hoping to apply for a drug-free community grant, which would provide us a prevention program for kids 12 through 18, which are key ages. You're talking about, 5th grade and up. Those ages are important to teach our kids choices and to have the information available to them that this could happen to anybody, or what to do if your friend is using, and how to address those issues. So I'm hoping down the road that that's something that we as a community will be able to embrace and take on. It's exciting, and it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah. What age do kids tend to start experimenting and getting caught up in this?
This is sad, but 12 or 13.
Yeah,
It's a young
very
age.
young age. Oh my gosh.
And you need to also stop and look back at what do our kids today see? not only just at home, but you have social media, which is 24/7, 7 days a week. Most kids today, unfortunately, I think, have cell phones at a very young age. And, there's social media can be a great thing, but it also can be detrimental. So what, how do we stop that? Or how do we at least give them the ammunition to be able to make choices, but also to have a place to go to say, I don't know what to do. But, and not only on substance use, but I think that COVID has brought it even more to the forefront. It's a mental health issue. So what are we doing for supports for our kids and even adults in our community, mental health wise? Again, it's always been, you don't talk about your mental health. You always tell everybody you're okay. You don't, for kids, you don't narc out another classmate or neighbor because you saw them smoking pot or they offered you a cigarette. I hope that kids today will learn to be able to say, I was in a situation, I was offered a cigarette. We understand the peer pressure point of it, but how do we get them to have a safe place to talk about it with it not being a narking out my friend? And give them the words to give back to their friends about why you're choosing not to have a cigarette. And not do it in a belittling way or saying I'm better than you, but just that, I'm making that choice and I want you to accept my choice that I don't want to try a cigarette. I don't want to try that drink. It's an ever-ending saga, I think, unfortunately.
I think that the point you bring up is a strong one when we think about kids, is that, kids want to be accepted. They want to be part of the crowd. You don't want to be the outcast
Right.
or bullied if you're not, following the group.
Yep.
And the pressure to try this stuff and drink, and, I certainly did my share in high school and college.
Right,
We
me
all
too.
do at that age.
Yep.
It's what you do at that age. Fortunately, I didn't have that gene, evidently, because it was never an issue for me. And
Right.
I don't even drink at all because I've always been athletic, so it's been the focus of my life. But to your point, how do we give the kids the strength to stand up, to advocate for what they feel is right, but the pressure that they feel they have to bend in order to be accepted by their friends that are doing it?
And that's community support. That's us coming together and really taking on our community of issues at the forefront. And I think that we need to come together as a community to get that message out to kids. It's not about right or wrong. It's about choices. It's okay, whatever your choice is, as long as you have some place to go to talk to about that choice. And I think on the kid level, I would like to see some more, after school programming, that these kids could, I'm going to call it a club for better lack of words at the moment, but that they can come together and also talk about their issues that are happening, in their grade or their school, and talk about how to promote some positive outcomes, and how do we, talk about drinking at our prom and why it's not cool. And I don't think that we necessarily do that. And I think that, honestly, we probably have more kids who don't use than use, but they come across as the minority because they're not the cool kids.
Yeah, right.
And again, I think it's a change that has to come from the community level to the family level, to then move into the school level. If if you're a family who sits down every night or doesn't sit down to eat dinner every night with your family, for one, that in itself is presenting a disconnect. Your kids don't learn how to talk to one another or have conversations. I mean, I grew up, no matter what, ate dinner 7 days a week together, unless you were at a friend's house. And I mean, but again, I learned how to have conversations. I learned how to talk about things. I learned history at the dinner table. I just think that it's a great step in communication and how to start talking with your kids and setting family boundaries and rules. So if that's not happening, we kind of already have the disconnect. And then if you are a family who, you worked your 8-hour day and you come home and you walk in the door and you throw down your bag and the first thing you do is you pop open a bottle of wine. I have to tell you that statistically, moms today have a really high percentage of alcoholism in America because partly it's the stress level, but also socially, we have promoted that drinking is okay. And the way that we relieve our stress and be able to move on in our day is we have a glass of wine or you have 2 glasses of wine. And, you can start now seeing on social media about moms getting together, bring your bottle of wine. Well, your kids see that. So you are an influencer to your kids, and you're the first influencer. And there's different levels of that. I mean, you also just, so your kids see that. So to them, it's okay to drink.
Yeah.
Which then rolls into marijuana becoming legalized in Massachusetts. We have definitely hit that area of, kids will say, well, it's legal now, so I can smoke. Well, no, you're under 18. You can't smoke. It's not legal. Well, my parents get it for me. Well, that shouldn't be happening either, but it is happening. But then also, they've been growing up in a household where their parents have openly smoked marijuana in front of their kids. It's legal. I get it. But for a kid, it changes their brain. And if you're doing that behavior, like probably your kids are athletic, because you were always athletic.
Right.
Those things that you did with your children at a young age are what they're going to do as young adults and then as adults. So we can look at that and say, oh, so we sat down every day and we drank, so your kids will probably be drinkers. But we also can say that if you were a parent that went out running every day or went to the Y every day or, or a club every day to work out, most likely probably your kids also have that trait later in life to have the same behavior.
They grew up doing, right.
So
is part of the message, you raise an interesting point, it sounds like a good part of your messaging to parents is the importance of being good role models and mentors, that children model the behavior from the people that they love and respect and look up to. And, while it's legal, it may not necessarily be right.
Right, exactly.
And if we want our children to grow up a certain way, we need to model that behavior. As hard as it is for us to necessarily modify our own lifestyle, a lot of cases that may be healthy for us to modify that lifestyle, but we need to be thinking about what our children are seeing and what type of messages are we sending down to our kids, both directly and indirectly.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's, and that just goes right into the teen years, and it moves on from there.
You're right. I'm sure that, Stefan Zaporowski, I have a very high regard for him as our superintendent, and, he just shows a real concern for, the development of children and the life that they will have post high school and post all the grades here in the public school system. But I'm guessing that that's a big part of what's happening in the schools, is trying to get that message out and trying to create support mechanisms for students, who don't want to be involved, but students who've already gotten involved.
Yes, and has been super supportive. And our schools already have some great programs in place that have come from within the school department, which has always been awesome. My thought is we're just combining our resources, and the schools can't do it all. And nor should we be putting all of the apples in one basket, which is the school. The schools are not our end all. I mean, it is an extremely important part to our community, but we can't expect them to do it all either. And if we are, then we better come up with the money for that to happen for our school departments, because they are working hard and diligently, and the issues are bigger than just in the classroom. You know, and so that's that piece about the community. You know, if we as a community are promoting no substance use, no smoking, no vaping, no alcohol, the kids will get the message. But if we are promoting alcohol, I mean, I can say for vaping, we worked hard in the health department to remove vaping from our local convenience stores, and we were thrilled that the state joined in, and we've removed flavored vaping from our convenience stores. But I can tell you that the concern on the background of that is it's gone underground. Our kids are learning to make their own.
Really?
So it's a scary thought. Because we don't know what the products are that are in those underground vaping that's being made. We actually have a program coming here in the fall to our high schools and our middle school, and it's called In Plain Sight. It's actually a trailer of a child's bedroom that lays out all the pieces that if you suspect that your child may be using or vaping, it just everything, you can pick out those things in your child's bedroom. So we're excited. Again, that was through the superintendent and the principals at those schools. So those will be happening at the open houses for those schools this fall.
You know, I haven't heard as much about vaping lately. Now, I don't know if that's because other things like COVID have taken the headlines, or other, you know, Afghanistan's certainly in the headlines. You know, but is vaping still there, and then, you know, it's just not getting the attention that it was getting for a while? Or
you know, I was just recently trying to find statistics on that, and the word out there is that it looks like for our kids that vaping has dropped off. Unfortunately, data always tends to be 2, 3, or 4 years out. But the trend is, and the talk out there from research is that it is decreasing, and thank God, because what it does to your lungs is detrimental.
Right. That's really, really interesting. You know, I want to shift gears a little bit, because this is a program that's kind of geared around our senior population and the Westfield Council on Aging. But you know what? It starts at that age, and
it continues.
It does continue. And you shared with me in prepping for this show some statistics that talk about where things are with seniors, and it's really scary. Because we don't think of seniors as being addicted. You know, we think of that as a youth problem, but we don't think of that as an adult problem.
We don't. And it was, and also for me, really, Tina calling me and asking me to talk about it. Frankly, I do tend to work at that 12 to 30-year-old bracket, and I apologize, because now I know that I will definitely look a little bit more deeply in this. And I was shocked at the statistics out there. And like one of them was that most people 65 and older take one or two or more opiate or benzo-related medications at the same time, along with their other medications. So if you think of benzos, those are like Valium, Xanax, and then in the opiate line, you're talking about oxycodones, any, a painkiller type thing. So think about, you've got one that is a downer and one that is an upper. So you're
Right.
fighting your body
Right.
each time that you're taking those. But then they're also on many other meds. I learned that, for our senior population, it's actually called the silent epidemic because a lot of them are also using alcohol, using marijuana, and using marijuana that their providers know about. So my thought for this show was to talk about if you're a caretaker for one of your elderly parents or aunt or uncle, what can you do to help them? Be aware of what they're taking for medication. And, if you're a person who goes to their doctor's appointments with them, talk to the doctor about that. But then also be aware of what looks like an overdose or a medical emergency for your person. They may be slurring their speech. They may be unresponsive, like they're sleeping on and off in their chair. But again, all of these symptoms are also typical of other medical medications that you could be taking. So that's what's difficult, I think, for our elderly population, is probably 99% of them are getting their medications from their doctors. So we don't know all the interactions between those. So you have this list of medication you're taking, but you drink 2 or more drinks a day.
Right.
Well, your alcohol affects your medication. It also affects your mood. We certainly have seen the mental health piece over the last year for our seniors. They're even more depressed than what they were, or they've become depressed. They've had suicidal tendencies. They're lonely, but they're from a generation that you don't talk about these things in public,
Right.
Or even to your doctors, and that's why it's kind of a silent epidemic because it's always been that way. When they were in their 20s and 30s, they were probably using stuff that they shouldn't have been using, or they went to the doctor and said, "Oh, I'm really anxious." Well, so here's some Valium, here's some Xanax, which was available 20 or 30 years ago. "Oh, I'm really, they just moved to, I have this pain in my knee, but they happen to be on Xanax at the same time. You've got your 2 meds being used together. And we have made alcohol normal because it's legal.
Right. It's just part of our culture.
It's just part of our culture. Marijuana has probably become the same way. So it concerns me, and I really didn't think about it. Then I think about for the last year, all of our seniors have been isolated. How are they really doing? It really, and so then you're now doing your doctor visits by telehealth. So they're just calling in the scripts. People who have an addiction actually will move from doctor to doctor. So you might have certain scripts from one doctor and other scripts from other
Oh,
doctors.
that's interesting. Right.
And it's just very, I was just shocked at the ratios.
It's actually scary because when you think about, medications and their chemicals, you have a certain chemical balance in your body, and you start introducing drugs, and it affects that. And then when you start taking competing drugs, to your point, what effect is that having on your body or on your heart or anything else? And it's really scary.
And we've become a society of about everything is a quick fix.
Right. Give me a pill and that'll fix it.
Yep. Well, it doesn't.
Right.
And then, you think about, there's 30% of that population that are given prescriptions that, like you said, we don't know what that interaction is with other medication. And
Right.
there are plenty of us who don't tell our primary care physician that, oh yeah, I do have a drink or two every day. Well, a drink or two every day means you're an alcoholic. I mean, people don't like to hear that, but you are, because your body now needs it. So it does make you an alcoholic. Or do you just socially drink? Those are two very different things. If you're coming home every day from work or ending your day every day with, I need to unwind and I only know how to unwind with alcohol or marijuana, you have a problem. There are other avenues. There is gardening, there is running, there is exercising, there is walking, there's reading a book. There's knitting. There's so many other things to do to de-escalate your day.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm fortunate that athletics has always been a huge part of my life, and cycling, which I have a real passion for, skiing in the winter and canoeing, hiking. I've always enjoyed that. Yeah, I was a basketball player, high school and college,
Right.
But that was always my outlet. And it always has been, and music now. But I was fortunate. I never got drawn into the drug culture, or, I was a social drinker in college and, in my 20s and stuff. And then I really got serious about taking care of my body, and so I just stopped all that. I might have a half a beer once a year, but that's, but I have no interest in it, but I've always had other outlets, and, I think it's so important for people to explore and try to find those outlets. But
Right. So, and that goes back to teaching our kids those outlets
Right.
as a community. But I was really shocked at the information. I feel like it's a lost area that we just don't talk about for our seniors. We just
Right.
think that everything's okay. They've moved to their senior years and life is just bliss. Well, it's not bliss, for many of them.
Right.
And, thank God for the senior center and whatnot.
Oh, my goodness.
But, what do we have in place even for them? Where do they reach out? And then, then that flows into, we have a generation of grandparents who are raising grandkids.
One of the statistics you shared was 2.6 million. 2.6 million grandparents are raising grandchildren across the country. And I got thinking about that, and I said, wow, I've got several friends my age whose lives have not gone where they thought they were going.
Right.
Their kids have had issues or whatever. They're now raising their grandchildren, and
Right.
so they're raising a second family, and they're not able to travel or do the other things that you think you're going to do when you retire.
Right. And the retirement funds
Right.
are paying for college, high
Right.
school, clothing on their grandchildren, food on the table.
Right.
And even more so, probably paying lawyer fees. If they have chose to go for custody of their grandchildren, that's where their retirement funds
Yeah.
are going.
Yeah.
And then we just think about what our retirement community is really living on for Social Security.
Right.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah. No, it really is.
So,
I want to share a couple of these other statistics because I thought they were really interesting. You shared that 17% of people in the United States over 65 years old, of which unfortunately I am now part of that group, have abused prescription medications, according to the Office of Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Services, and approximately 30% of adults over 65 are given some type of prescription medicine, again, according to the same organization. Those are significant numbers when you think about it. Do you think, when you look at substance abuse or alcoholism in the senior populations, did that start much, much earlier in their life and it's just carried over as they've gotten
Yes.
older? Or does some of that start as they get older because of loneliness or isolation or any of the other stuff that goes on in their lives?
It is a combination of both. There is a group of people who did, again, because we know that addiction starts at a much younger age, though that group has continued to use. Their uses may have changed, and what we have seen has happened that in the past, they were getting most of their medications from their primary care physicians. And we know that nationally, because of oxycodone and the addiction that has happened with it, the ruling has changed in how much can be prescribed, which is awesome. But you have a person who used to get a 30-day supply from their primary care physician, probably for years, on a prescription opiate or benzo prescription, who now can only get a 7-day supply. Or the primary says, no, I can't give this to you at all anymore. Well, the addiction just doesn't go away.
Doesn't go away, right?
So that group in particular has probably moved to street use drugs, unfortunately, and it is happening in our elderly population or our senior
Never
population.
think about that.
We are seeing overdoses in that age bracket. We also see overdoses in that age bracket because they've over-medicated themselves. So that's another group. They took their meds in the morning, but they thought at noontime they didn't, so they retook their morning meds at noon. Well, and then add alcohol on top of that. That probably a call has gone out that that person has overdosed, and it is a multi-overdose. It's probably an alcohol or a multi-drug overdose. And we're working on to really collect those statistics locally too, so that'll change in the next year. And that's data that we are collecting through our DART program. And then I really was shocked to read that there is a population, their life as a senior has changed. You've entered retirement, and all of a sudden, your life is really, you looked forward to it, but it's really changed. And all of a sudden, you're not going to work every day and seeing that group of people every day. And even your lifetime friends are passing away. So there's a mental health piece to it. So and those are the ones that are probably starting to use, and they're calling their primary. So their primary is giving them a prescription, and or they've increased their drinking, or we've seen an increase in suicidal thoughts for our senior population. And what is in place for them to go and get help. And if you think about, we've always worried about that beforehand, and then COVID happened, and they have no contact. And thank God for Tina and what she set up, and had phone calling going out to our seniors that were at home and isolated, because we wouldn't know what's going on for them. So it's just a difficult situation, I think.
Yeah. We're fortunate that we do have the senior center. Tina Gorman does a great job as our director, and she's certainly an advocate for the elderly population. And, I think it's so important that, sometimes they can be forgotten. And
Unfortunately, we do.
Yep.
And I think that another piece that I think is hard for their children is they're a generation that you didn't talk about things. You kept your emotions to yourself. You didn't share that with your neighbors. You didn't share it out in the community. And you've always tried to keep it under wraps or under control. But it's going to fall apart at some time. And so I guess to me, to the senior population, and I get it, it's hard to talk about, but you've got to find that one person to talk to. Be it a friend, another family member. Your primary care is a key person that you should be talking to. I just think it's a great place to kind of have some checks and balances in place for you. And it's okay to talk about it. Don't be ashamed. And I have to say, substance use and whatnot in our mental health well-being in the United States has always been a shameful, supposedly, topic, and you didn't talk about it, and you didn't have it, and we all, someone had sent me something the other day, and I thought, oh, that's so right. The question was, oh, how are you today? Fine. Okay, I'm good. Well, underneath, that person has severe depression. They're falling apart. They're just trying to get through the next hour of their day. They're just trying to get through their work day, get their kids off to school. They're really not fine. They're really not okay. But we have the tendency to tell everybody we're okay. And I remember both my parents, unfortunately, are passed, but both of my parents very early on said to us 5 kids, we will never burden you with you taking care of us. Because it took me till now after they were gone. At first it was like, well, they have things in place and we'll just make it through it. But really what they were saying was, at some point I am going to become a burden to somebody, and it's not going to be to my kids. That's a really awful thought.
Yeah.
But again, we're not supposed to rely on others. You're supposed to only rely on yourself. And I think that happens a lot in our senior population.
So let's talk a little bit about where people, and you've alluded to it a couple of times, but where can people get help? And, specifically, who can they call, and what should they be thinking about if they think they have a problem, or if they think that a friend of theirs or a relative has a problem and they want to reach out for them?
I think that if it is you that has the problem and you want help, I think a great place to start, honestly, is with your primary.
Okay.
I also think that you should be talking to a therapist.
Okay.
And thirdly, especially if you're involved in your senior health centers in your communities, and especially our Westfield one has a fantastic program set up, there are resources there for you to get help, or for us to at least give you direction on where to find help. I think that if you're worried about a friend, I think that you honestly need to talk to them and say, hey, I'm really worried. I noticed these little changes. I noticed that, when we have dinner, you have multiple glasses of wine and you start slurring your speech. We have to talk about it honestly. And they, their initial reaction to you may not be very pleasant, but they also need to hear it. And you need to come back and say, hey, I'm not looking to call, same thing with kids. I'm not looking to call you out, but I want to help you. And if you need help or you need someone to talk to, please pick up the phone and call me. Please stop over and see me. I used to do something with my kids, and I think that you could kind of set something up similar with your parents. I used to do something called red flag, yellow flag. So if I sat at a dinner table and I said to my kids, I got a couple of yellow flags, and here's why I have these yellow flags, be it about, like, I'm not seeing homework being done, or, the point of it is we're not going to talk about it right now, but you have 24 hours to come back to me and say, hey, hey, Mom, yeah, we do need to talk about some stuff. And I'm not to be, and as a parent, I could definitely do this, not be confrontational with them so that they could come and say, you're right, I haven't been doing my homework and this is why, here's where I need the help. So that they learned that, somebody is aware that I'm struggling a little bit, even though I think I have it all together. And I think that our senior population goes through the same thing. I'm just going, they're going through the motion of the day. And I also think that part of our senior population probably thinks that they've been forgotten. I can truly step back and look at, I wish there was a lot I had done better before my mother had passed. Because I just got wrapped up in my own personal life, and I thought everything was just moving along great for her life. Well, it wasn't.
Right.
And she definitely would put up her walls so that you couldn't get in because she didn't want to be going through what she was going through. So I think that if all of a sudden you kind of see your parents withdrawing from family activities or even social activities, ask if everything's okay. Because, they may not be feeling well. Let's be realistic. As we get older, our body doesn't actually work our best anymore. and I'm only in my late 50s and I'm feeling that. So, and I just think that family is definitely, certainly a resource. And if you're a person who doesn't have family, your friends are your family. Your community is your family. And I think that you really do need to reach out to them. And I know for myself, I recently moved and realized that most of my street is retired.
Oh, wow.
Which I didn't realize. But it was just interesting, and it put in perspective that even for myself as a new neighbor, you don't see the garage door open for a couple days. You don't see the car, you don't see them out in the yard. Stop over, check in on them, ask them if they're okay. And I certainly did that in this year and a half of COVID because none of them wanted to go to the grocery store, which I totally get, but again, some of them became very isolated and very lonely. So, what do we put in place for them? So, even as a neighbor, even if you don't think that you guys are friends, I hope that your neighbor stops over. It's garden season. Drop off a couple tomatoes and cucumbers to them just to say hi. And, it's just, and it's interesting because my parents had moved to Florida years ago. And one of the things that those neighbors all became very close in their little community. And one of the things that they did was the newspapers were thrown on their driveways early in the morning. Well, if by 9 a.m. one of those newspapers was still on someone's driveway, a phone call would happen to that household and say, hey, are you okay? Because, at that in the later years, I mean, they were in their early 80s. And who knew if you could have possibly fallen getting out of bed or fell in the bathroom,
stories,
and so these were complete strangers who became friends. And it's just a simple little thing of noticing that someone's newspaper is still in their driveway to check on them.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up here, but Kathy, it's a really interesting topic, far more expansive, actually, when you start looking at the breadth of it. We could spend another hour here talking easily.
Good.
It's a societal issue. There's no question about it. To hear that our kids as young as 12 and 13 years old are starting to use and experiment and addiction, that one of our genes is an addiction gene, that you've got to be aware. You don't know if you have it,
Right.
and if you find that you do, and you find that you are easily addicted to things, you hopefully get control of your life and find ways within which to step out of that mode, or at least control that mode. So it's a powerful topic. I hope that our city recognizes the importance of this. I remember the task force getting started. I'm so thankful that they really got that going, and that they also saw it as an important priority to create a position for with you in this role at 19 hours a week. I don't think it's barely enough to do the things that you need to do, and I hope that over time that they would take a look at increasing that to a full-time position, and maybe even have a staff. When we look at our societal issues and when we look at where our kids are going, what they're going to be as an adult is determined by the childhood that they have.
Right.
And we need to do everything that we can to provide the
Right.
outlets and the resources, the programs, the opportunities for those kids to grow up so that they feel loved, nurtured, supported, and they have outlets that give them what they need to feel healthy and fulfilled without turning to substance abuse. And, I commend you for doing everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Kathy,
You're right. We could talk for hours.
yeah, we really could. Kathy Cotigno, coordinator of CORE of Greater Westfield. It's the Coalition for Outreach, Recovery, and Education in the city. One thing I'm going to ask you before we do sign off is, how can people get in touch with you if they have questions?
So my office is actually in the health department. I can rattle off my phone number here, 413-642-9322. But you can also go, if you're web savvy, you can go to the health department, and our webpage is actually under there. It's actually currently a little under construction, but my basic information is there. Or if you just call the health department, they know how to reach me.
Yeah, that's good to know that you're part of the health department. So basically, if you just call the city, they can find the information that they need.
Yep.
Well, Kathy, thank you so much. You certainly are a wonderful role model and advocate for this topic. You unfortunately have lived the dark side of it as well.
I have.
In your own life. But we thank you for your dedication to this city and to ensure that our youth have the best life that they can, and your focus on seniors and helping Tina Gorman with the work that she's doing.
And I will, I have a list of resources that I'll get to Tina, so she would probably have them at the senior center for you too,
Yeah.
if anybody was looking
That's
for
good to know.
particular.
Right.
There's a great grandparents raising grandchildren organization.
Right.
But I also have some online information on prescription use and alcoholism, and so I'll send them off to Tina probably later this week.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So you have been listening to another episode of Westfield Council on Aging Presents. I want to say thanks to Pete Coles, who is our WCPC Westfield Cable Channel 15 manager and producer, for his help and support to make this show possible. I am Harry Rock, your host, and on behalf of Pete Coles and Tina Gorman, thanks for tuning in for another show. We'll see you the next time. Thanks.